Welcome to Moments with Marianne. Allow me to interrupt your train of thought with something that may be one of the most interesting things you hear today. This is Marianne Pastana, and we're here today with special guest Jan Chozen Bays, who's here to share with us her new book, Mindful Medicine: 40 Simple Practices to Help Healthcare Professionals Heal Burnout and Reconnect with Purpose. So let's welcome to the show, Jan Chozen Bays.
Thank you so much.
And what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. What inspired you to write it?
Well, I'm a pediatrician, recently retired. And for the last 30 years of my career, I specialized in child abuse. So we had a child abuse center. And currently they're seeing between 100 and 120 kids a month for child abuse, and some very, very disturbing and severe cases, including children who didn't survive their abuse. And doing that for that long, it takes something to help hold you up and refresh you so you can go back the next day when you've had a pretty sad day. And fortunately, when I was in medical school and in my training and internship and residency and fellowship in pediatrics, I began meditating, and specifically the Zen form of meditation. So I'm now a Zen teacher. But it really, I couldn't have done the work that I've done in medicine without a meditation practice and a mindfulness practice. So we say meditation, but a lot of people who are very busy, like healthcare professionals, they don't have time to sit down and spend 45 minutes a day meditating. So what I learned to do was to weave moments of mindfulness, like 3 minutes here, 5 minutes there, into my day, so that I was continually able to refresh myself so I could go on, with whatever patient came next or whatever situation came next. And then during the COVID pandemic, because we had so much burnout in healthcare professionals. So, for example, we have 4 nurses in our family. So talking to them, it's affected doctors, nurses, EMTs, first responders of all kinds. People were really suffering badly during the COVID pandemic, especially healthcare professionals seeing so many people die. We expect to save people, the majority of people, not to have the majority of people die. So then I realized we need help in our profession. And fortunately, about 5 years ago, we had started a mindful medicine group and done retreats, short weekend retreats for healthcare professionals, and they had found it immensely helpful. People who were burnt out and thinking of quitting their profession were revitalized and back working happily. So those 3 things all came together: my Zen meditation practice and teaching, my career as a child abuse professional, and also our mindful medicine group. And I decided to write the book because we were doing mindfulness exercises in the mindful medicine group, and people were finding the ones that really worked for them and for their patients. So the book has 40 of those exercises that we've done over the past 2.5 years of the pandemic.
Well, I applaud you because, you started meditating in the 70s. And
yes.
And what did doctors think about meditation then?
That it was weird, that it was woo-woo. And so those of us who were beginning to meditate kept quiet about it. We would meet sometimes in the hallways and, whisper like, how did your retreat go? And what have you learned in meditation recently? So it's very gratifying to go from weird woo-woo person to mainstream or pioneer in the field of mindfulness and meditation in medical care, to mainstream. Now, mindfulness is part of mainstream, both for healthcare professionals and for patients.
People that were saying that was woo-woo back then are probably, subscribing to it now.
Yes, I think that's true. So I just went to my 50th medical school reunion we were in a new medical school at UC San Diego, and we were the first class. And I just went to our reunion, and everybody was interested in coming and talking to me about meditation. And a lot of people had become meditators along the way. So yeah, I think you're right.
So funny. Well, and so how does mindfulness just kind of improve the psychological well-being of a person?
Well, I'll tell you my fundamental scheme for that. So from the time that we started to learn to talk, our mind has been filled with thoughts. From when we began to recognize what human speech meant, and we began to speak, then our mind began filling with thoughts. Before that, we're really in a state of mostly awareness. You look at a little baby lying in a crib, and there's no thoughts in their minds. There's just sensations. So they're seeing color and form, and faces appear and disappear from their vision. And here comes something pink, and they don't know it's their hand. It's just something fascinating. We've all seen babies just fascinated with their own feet or their hands, and just living in a state of interest and wonder, as long as they're, of course, fed and changed and comfortable. But as soon as we start thinking, then we understand when people are telling us, oh, don't do that, or, bad boy, or don't eat that, you're going to get fat. And then all these notions begin to fill our head. And eventually in adult life, it becomes a tangle of emotions and a lot of what we call voice of the inner critic. So the inner critic is in there giving you directions about what you shouldn't do. And also the human mind is innately drawn to the negative. I mean, if you look at the news feed and you count the number of articles that are negative in tone, meaning here's something to be worried about, here's something to be afraid of, whether it's climate change or it's the war in Ukraine, or maybe nuclear war is imminent again, or, mass shootings, or just go on, or some new toxic chemical that's been discovered that's microplastic in your bloodstream, for example. So maybe 90 to 95% of news stories are negative. And then there's a cute little story about a dog who got lost and found its way home, or raccoons who come and, eat hot dogs from your porch that cheer you up. But the proportion of what I would call negative news is huge. And it's because our mind is trained to worry about the negative. What could be harmful? How can I save this person I'm living inside from all of these negative impacts? But that takes a toll on us when we're always thinking about things to be worried about. So, for example, in Zen practice, we often say, your mind ruminates over the past, all your past mistakes. It's like the inner critic has a file cabinet it pulls out. And remember in March 2 years ago, you made this mistake? Don't make that again. And that's particularly strong in medicine, because the consequences of making a mistake can mean that somebody is disabled or even dies. So healthcare professionals have huge inner critics. And then our mind also goes to the future with anxiety about the future. What if this happens? What if that happens? But in meditation or in moments of mindfulness, we let go of the past, worries about the past and anxiety about the future, and we just rest in pure presence, the pure presence of, like right now, I'm looking at the screen in front of me, and instead of looking at it as, oh, this is an interview and I got to be worried I say the right thing, I'm looking at the beautiful blue of your dress and how your hair in your picture is kind of feathered and touches your neck, and your bright blue eyes, and just kind of, they're just shining with a kind of kindness. And then the screen around you is also shining and sparkling. And while I'm in that awareness mode, we call it, I'm not worried about anything. I'm just enjoying, like a baby does, what is appearing before me. So when we can weave moments like that into our life, then our life just becomes much more permeated with positive moments, with uplifting moments, And the research is quite extensive, and it shows that people's sense of well-being and interest in their life and in their world in a positive way goes up when they're practicing mindfulness and having some time to meditate.
Well, I so appreciate you going through that and explaining that. It just means so much to be in the present moment. And I think so many times that moment gets by us so quickly.
It does. The example I give is everybody's had peak moments. Everybody knows this. It's not foreign to us. So we've all had peak moments, like you're standing and looking at this gorgeous sunset, and it's just pure awareness and pure joy in the beauty of the colors and the light. And then somebody next to you says, "Oh, that's nice, but I saw a nicer sunset in Hawaii 2 years ago," and crash. The moment crashes because you're into comparison, which is past and future. So we know about peak moments, but we don't have training in how to enter them, and that's what mindfulness can help us with.
So when we talk about, your book and the mindfulness practices in them, I know you really have a focus for healthcare professionals, but is this book for everyone as well?
Of course, of course. And especially people who are dealing with people, which is all of us, right? People who are dealing with people all day long. For example, one of the exercises is this person could die tonight. And it sounds a bit morbid, but it's a very interesting practice. Healthcare professionals, of course, know that anybody could die tonight because they've seen so many cases of sudden death, unexpected death. And it's partly based on a Japanese practice of when you say goodbye to someone, do it with intention and knowing that you may never see them again for whatever reason. They could die, they could move to China and never return. You don't know. They could have a car accident and be, paralyzed and brain dead, and their personalities shift completely. So the Japanese practice is when you're saying goodbye to someone, you're really conscious of saying goodbye and say it with love and intention. And then if someone's driving off, you wave until you can't see them anymore, aware that this might be the last time you will actually contact them and see them. And it brings a kind of poignancy into your life when you do that practice with friends, with especially partners. I try to do it with my husband, even if he's just going to be gone for a few hours to the store. I just try to do an intentional goodbye or a little hug or a little quick kiss. And part of the reason is so that your last memory of your last encounter isn't of an argument, which people carry that with them for the rest of their life. Oh no, the last time I saw them, we argued. I feel so badly. So that is a beautiful practice for anyone to do with their children, as their children go off to school, when their partner goes off to work, when somebody goes off on a business trip, especially, to realize this person could die tonight and I really want to have a positive farewell with them.
Wow, that's so impactful. And that person could be us too, so it allows us to kind of leave a kindness in our wake,
Yes. And there's a kind of relief in admitting what's true. We're all going to die, but we all don't want to think about that. And healthcare professionals, in a way, are the worst because we've studied and seen so many diseases. We have to have a kind of protective wall around us and believe that we're not going to get that disease. And of course we do get something. Something eventually kills us, whether it's cancer or a heart attack or a stroke or an auto accident. And so just to have moments where you acknowledge the truth of, yes, we could never meet again. And it just changes you from thinking busy in your mind to the heart opening and for a moment, connecting with this other person and connecting with yourself.
I think that provides such a beautiful opportunity and just a moment where people are able to have this deep connection. And what a way to live life if we could all do that.
Yes. Yes. And it takes practice. I've been doing it for decades. And still, I catch myself ruminating or anxious about the future. Like we have a big event coming up in a week, and I catch my mind just going back and forth to worrying about have we taken care of this? And, I need to call this person. I need to put this on my to-do list. And then I just say, okay, stop, put it on your to-do list and let go and just be present. And then my mind settles down and opens, and I enter back into a world of, I call it a kind of world of wonder, at least a world of appreciation of what's right here.
In your book, I know you talk about mindfulness-based interventions to help with burnout and to find purpose. Is that something that not just healthcare workers, but a lot of people are going through right now?
Yes. I think especially with the disruptions due to the pandemic, and a lot of people have quit their jobs or have changed how they do their jobs, or wondering, is this really the vocation that I would like to carry on for the next 5 years or 10 years or the rest of my life? And of course, family life has been disrupted too, with kids in and out of school for the first year of the pandemic. And it is a time of change. And during a time of change is often when anxiety mind comes in and takes over. And of course, we all wonder, is this a temporary lull in the pandemic? Will we have yet another surge? What's going to happen? Let alone our questions about political issues, international issues, climate change, and so on. So we all need time to just sit down or stand or walk in presence. Because it's like, somebody once said, it's like taking my mind to the laundromat. And it can happen in just a few moments.
Well, I like that analogy. Especially, everyone's got this, not everyone, because there's some people that really work on not having this, but the inner critic, man, that little puppy's alive and well for most of us.
Yes. Yes.
So how do we get beyond that?
Well, the first step is recognizing this is the voice of the inner critic, because that helps you with 2 degrees of separation, and that's what you need. As one of my teachers said, what's unconscious is unconscious. And as long as it's unconscious, we can't work with it. But once we recognize, this is the voice of the inner critic, because it can be very sneaky. One of our women doctors, we were working with the inner critic in our mindful medicine group. And she said, as we were sharing, she said, I just don't think I have an inner critic. I just can't detect it in there. And then I said, but I remember a few weeks ago you were saying that you were really worried that your teenage daughter would never have a successful romantic partnership, because you had divorced your husband. And that was such a bad example. And I said, that's the voice of the inner critic. And she went, oh my gosh, I do have an inner critic, but I thought it was telling me the truth. I didn't realize it's not telling me the truth. So the first step is to recognize it's in there. And most people know. If I ask people, are you aware of a voice that says negative things to you? Most people are quite aware of it. And then the second step often is to give it a name. Maybe investigate, does it have a gender? Does this voice remind you of someone? Give it a name. And then we have people actually draw a picture of their inner critic, which is very helpful. When I was doing this, I realized I don't have much of an inner critic, because I had very loving, very supportive parents. But my inner critic is in the form of Bessie Stapleton, who was my high school English teacher. And she was very prim and proper. She wore, white pearls and a black dress and black sturdy shoes, and her hair was always permed. And, she seemed very old to me. I'm sure she was about 35 or 40. But she would say, class, that is not good poetry, when we were writing poetry. Class, that is not good poetry. And so she's kind of my embodiment of the inner critic. And it's a good embodiment, because I can kind of laugh at the inner critic. So eventually what we'd like to do, because the inner critic has some wisdom, it's pointing out things that we maybe need to change. But in medicine, for example, the inner critic will say, don't you remember 3 years ago you gave an inappropriate dose of medication to that patient and you almost killed them? Don't do that again. And it'll just keep nagging you about that over and over and over again. And we're smart, we learn from our mistakes. Mistakes are an opportunity to learn and change. But the inner critic just doesn't believe that. It's so frantic about the possibility that you will make a mistake and bad things will happen to you. But there is a little bit of truth in there, like, make sure you're attentive with your medication dose. But that's very different from, you stupid idiot, don't you remember when you almost killed a patient? So parents know this. A good parent knows how to frame something in talking with the child. And I often say, if we heard a mother or a father saying to a child out loud in a supermarket what the inner critic says to us inside, we would call Child Protective Services. We would know that is cruel. And we wouldn't allow it. We wouldn't allow a friend who talked to us that way all the time to be our friend. So why do we allow this voice to keep tearing us down and making us anxious? So that's another way to point out the harm of the inner critic. And then we begin to work on transforming the inner critic. It's not like we're going to make it go away, but transforming it into a more kindly voice, a friendly voice, an inner cheerleader, or an inner good friend, or an inner wise teacher.
Well, we can all use an ally when it comes to going through our daily lives and retraining our inner critic to show up in a way that empowers us. I think is so, just so important.
Yes, it really is. And it helps to recognize that the inner critic arose when we were children and we were criticized or bullied, usually in school or perhaps by parents, and verbal abuse by parents. And it arose as a preemptive strike. So the inner critic is saying, don't let that happen again. That was terrible. And I'm going to keep reminding you so you don't forget by criticizing you. So its means are neurotic. Its intention is good, is to prevent you from getting into trouble. But it also was formed when we were very young and we had no tools. The only tools a young child has when it's upset is to have a temper tantrum and scream and stamp its feet and yell. And so its tools are kind of based on the tools of a 3 to 5-year-old or a angry teenager, reactive teenager who's being bullied or criticized. And so once we can see it as that very young, very frightened child or frightened teenager, because the world is frightening when you're a teenager. Where do you find your place? Then we can begin to kind of parent it and take care of it. And that's also another way we work with it.
It seems that a lot of people may need to, reparent their inner critic. And is that something that takes, a very long time? Is it just something that they need somebody to help guide them through that process?
You're exactly right. We need to learn to reparent that part of us that's so frightened and is yelling from inside. And it just takes practice. Now there's a movement, a mindful self-compassion movement, which is very strong, and the research is very, very strong about the benefits of mindful self-compassion. And it's really based on that. It has 3 elements, which is recognizing, oh, I'm having a hard time right now. Or if it's the inner critic, my inner critic is having a really hard time right now. And then to touch yourself in a way a friend would touch you, like a little gentle pat on your shoulder or a touch on your arm or a touch on your heart, and to say, this is hard. We're having a hard time right now. So acknowledging what's true. And then to open it out into common humanity. There are many people in the world right now who are having the same kind of difficulty and really suffering. They're in distress. So this is not abnormal. This is part of being a human being. But it's hard. And then to say, I'm here for you. And that's the parenting part. I'm here for you. I will always be here for you. And together we'll be fine. So those are kind of the 3 steps of mindful self-compassion, and they're very, very helpful. Sometimes we also recommend that if people go back to recognize the child who became so distressed when it was first bullied or first yelled at, and to imagine taking that child onto their lap or sitting next to them and comforting that child in the same way, that was really hard, and I'm sorry I wasn't there to help you, but now I'm here to help you. And anytime you get scared or worried, I'm here. Just let me know and we can talk about it. Just like a good parent or a good friend would.
I love how in your book you talk about, in chapter 4, it just starts off with, to take care of others, we must take care of ourselves, and
Yes.
How often we don't do that.
Correct. There are many careers that involve a lot of self-sacrifice, and that becomes kind of a badge of honor in the profession. But it certainly becomes a habit that if there's another sick person coming in when you're supposed to go off shift and go home, and everybody else is busy, then you stay late. I was talking to my son who works in a nursing home, and I often call him at the end of his shift, which is about 11 o'clock at night, and he'll say, no, I'm going to stay another couple hours because we just don't have enough nurses. So that's how we're trained to respond to suffering and to sacrifice our own needs or our own agenda. Parents do this. To be a parent is to realize, whoa, the needs of this little person are going to come first a lot of times. I might want to go to a party, but if they've got a fever of 103 and are breaking out in spots, I need to stay home or take them to the emergency room. But it's like, exaggerate that many, many times, and that's what it's like to work as a healthcare professional, because people are always coming in sick. I remember when I first entered medicine, I was shocked to realize, there's no holiday from illness on Saturdays and Sundays, or New Year's Day, or Christmas Day. I'm going to have to work those days, or at least most of them. So we just learn in our training that other people come first. But then that's where burnout comes in. We don't have infinite internal resources or inner energy. And we have to take care of ourselves in order to take care of the other people we're taking care of.
You often hear of secondary trauma that first responders and healthcare workers go through.
Yes.
And just how that impacts them. And no one's really kind of taught them, like, how do we work with that? How do we help them work through what's happening on a daily basis?
That is a really important point. And it was taught to us in our child abuse center by our hospital chaplain, because we had 3 horrendous child abuse cases in a row one week. And even the front desk people who took the intake call were traumatized. And so we asked the hospital chaplain to come over and talk with us. And she said, you're all suffering from chronic acute distress. And she said, it's like being in the ICU. And of course, in the pandemic, this became much worse. If you're in the ICU, maybe one day you get a child who drowned in the backyard swimming pool when people were being inattentive and can't be saved. And then the next day you get a child with leukemia who's been in and out 10 times. You know the child well, you know the family well, you're really attached to them. And this time the child's life has run out and they die. And then the next day you get a child who's been in a car accident and is brain damaged. And you don't have any time between those cases to really look into your own heart and the suffering that's accumulating in your heart. And you need a way, and often it's a spiritual way, to clean that out and keep going. She said it's kind of like wartime, where soldiers are just putting all the trauma of what they've seen behind them. And then, of course, they emerge with PTSD, post-traumatic stress, at the end of their time of service. So fortunately, we're recognizing that, and we're really urging healthcare professionals to work with mindfulness, because it's been shown to be so effective, to help clear out that rising tide of suffering that's accumulating in your heart. But here's one problem in the healthcare profession. So the hospitals are now recognizing, and healthcare organizations are recognizing, burnout is a problem. Physician and nurse suicide is a huge problem. People quitting the profession is a huge problem. We're going to have an after hours workshop on burnout and require everybody to attend. And so,
Oh boy.
these poor healthcare professionals who put in an 8 to 12-hour shift and maybe worked overtime, then they're supposed to go at 8 p.m. at night to a resiliency training or a burnout training. And there's so many on YouTube. There's so many kind of satirical skits about this. It's funny, but it's sad funny. And so the healthcare professionals, they just can't do that. It just contributes to burnout. And that's why these mindfulness exercises are great, because they can be woven into your day and they don't prevent you from going home and getting dinner finally. A lot of healthcare professionals don't eat lunch, for example, don't eat meals because they can't. So you don't want to hold them back from going home and getting their first good meal of the day, or seeing their children and kissing them goodnight, or reading them a bedtime story, or having a spouse who's still awake and not snoring away in bed when you climb in finally. Yeah, so we can't add to their burden. We have to help them refresh themselves all day long.
Well, and to dovetail with that, in your book, you talk about wash your mind when you wash your hands. And I felt that was so I felt that was such a great way, to take little moments throughout the day.
Exactly right. And during the pandemic, of course, we were all sanitizing our hands and washing our hands. So it applied to everybody. And to take whatever the anxiety is, or worry or distress or tangle of thoughts in your head, and just let them go down the drain with the water or the soap suds, or, as you're sanitizing your hands, you're kind of sanitizing all of that and letting it go. The issue is remembering. The issue is remembering to do it. And that's why people have to actively practice until it becomes second nature.
Is there any type of practice someone can do on their way to work or their way home that would help boost their self-love or self-kindness?
You are a wonderful interviewer because you have read the book and you've picked up the important points in the book. It's a delight, actually, to talk with you.
Oh, I love this book. I felt it to be so impactful. I mean, I learned a lot from it. And as I'm going through this, I'm like, wow, had I learned this 20 years ago when I had a 2-hour commute, just to think that the different vibe I would have been in or bringing would have been, to work would have been awesome, or to my life.
Yes, it's so true. And I, at one point, had a 45-minute commute, and that's why I invented this practice. So loving kindness practice is a long, cherished practice, like 2,560 years practice. And it's specifically the antidote to anger, or a milder form of anger, which is more pervasive, which is irritation, or even anxiety is fear-based. So often in our commute, we've either got the news blasting and then we hear the same scary stories over and over again, or we're just going over in our head all the problems we're going to face in the next day or year. So a wonderful practice is loving kindness practice. And there are many ways to do it, but it helps to start with 3 phrases. The first of which is to recognize the negative. May I be free from? And usually I put fear and anxiety in that blank, but you can put anything in there. So may I be free from? And then, we start with yourself. Like they always say, fill up your own gas tank before you drive off to help others. And then the second phrase is a kind of balancing phrase. And may I be at ease. Today, may I be at ease. And then the third phrase is a kind of uplifting phrase. May I be happy. And it doesn't mean the kind of happiness we see in ads where you're at the top of a roller coaster with fireworks bursting in the background and you've got a Coke or a Pepsi in your hand and you're laughing deliriously. It's not that kind of happiness. It's the kind of simple happiness that everyone deserves. Everyone everywhere deserves, which is, I'm tired and I get to lie down in my bed and my sore body just can relax finally. Or I'm thirsty and I get a drink of cold water. It's that kind of happiness. Or my hands are dirty and I get to wash them, or I get to take a shower finally. That kind of happiness. So those 3 phrases you first apply to yourself, and then you radiate it out. And so what I would do driving to work was I would have the same wishes for all my coworkers, and then all of the patients, the children, and the families I would be seeing that day. I didn't know who they were, but I would still just send loving kindness to them. May you be free from fear and anxiety. May you be at ease. May you have happiness in your life. Find happiness in your life, even though right now you're going through a hard time. And we can do the same for our body. We can actually scan through our body and send loving kindness to our body, and especially body parts that are having trouble. Because usually when a body part is having trouble, so for example, I have a knee that's in trouble right now, and it's going to have surgery. And usually we kind of feel negatively about a body part that's having trouble. It's like, oh no, it's not cooperating. It's not functioning. Oh no, it hurts. I hate this. But that doesn't help your knee. So to direct those same phrases towards your knee, like, may you be free from pain. May you work well. May you find yourself back working well and at ease. May you become healthy. Because we know that nothing thrives under a barrage of negative attention, not our children or our pets or our partners or even plants. And I found when I did it on the way to work that somehow it changed the day. If I was changed, if I was more at ease and more content with and more ready for whatever happened, it just changed the day. But people have to try it for themselves and see if it works for them, how it works.
Well, I'm sure it would, because having that mindset in starting your day sets, I believe, the intention of how the day is going to be. And
Correct.
That's one of the things that I really appreciate about your book. And another thing too, my goodness, you've got all these places where you talk about, put a note here, place a note there to kind of remind you, to kind of prompt you on maybe you're putting a note on your pillow to remind you what you're grateful for.
Yes.
And I think that that's so important, because often we just get so busy, we forget these moments that we should really be grabbing.
Absolutely. And those little notes really help on your mirror, depending on what you're practicing at the time. So loving kindness, if you put a little loving kindness sticker on your mirror, then when you look at yourself in your mirror, instead of the critical voice coming in, you can just hold your face in your hands like you would a dear child and just pat your cheeks and say, oh, you're so beautiful, which we do for a dog and we do for a child. And why don't we do it for ourselves? Or a note on your pillow, as you said, that helps remind you to do gratitude practice before you go to bed. Or a note for healthcare professionals or those working with computers, put a little sticker on your computer. So, we all need reminding. Besides our to-do list, we need little notes here and there that remind us, oh yes, right now I could be doing that.
When we talk about gratitude practice, can it do things like, kind of detect what negative emotions we have, such as irritation or anger?
Yes, because often we're carrying irritation without knowing it, or anxiety without knowing it. So you become more and more aware of, so for example, sometimes, I live at a monastery, and so it's very big, and sometimes I'm walking along from one part of the monastery to another, and I realize I'm cranky right now. My mood is going sour right now. And recognizing that, I can switch to mindfulness, because always when that's happening, my attention is turned inward, and then there's a kind of mild grumbling going on, or overt grumbling going on, like, why don't people pick up their coffee cups? And so as soon as I recognize that, I can switch, and I can move my attention outward to things that I've been totally ignoring, like even the cracks in the sidewalk, or the plants as I pass them, and how they're bright colors of the flowers, or the leaves that are glowing, or the sky. Look up into the sky. We don't look up very much, and just see, oh, there's beautiful clouds up there, or even a rainbow that I missed. Or there's so many things we can do to step out of what we call an afflictive mind state. It's afflicting us and it will afflict others with suffering. But first is the step is recognizing it. And then the second step is moving into awareness and out of your head.
And that's like kind of a lifelong practice, right?
It absolutely is. You catch yourself over and over. But that builds strength. So the analogy I use is if you're going to the gym and you want to build strength in your biceps, let's say, you lift the weight, but you don't just hold it there. You put it down and you lift it again, and you put it down and you lift it again, and that's how you develop muscle. And it's the same with our heart and mind muscle, with our loving kindness muscle, let's say, is that you do it and it works, and then you forget, and then you realize, oh, I'm going sour, and you do it again and it works, and that's how you build the strength of practice and recognizing earlier and earlier when you've gone off track.
It really seems like when you recognize when you're off track is what is kind of that prompt to go, okay, well, now I can go ahead and work on this or practice that.
Yes. If you have no alternative, you're stuck. But mindfulness gives you all these alternatives. It's wonderful.
In your book, you talk about just the importance of remembering our vow. And I know for healthcare workers and first responders, that's one thing, but also for people who maybe have personal vows. Why is that important?
Yes. So I wrote a whole book on this. And partly because at the monastery, we get people who come in different stages of life. We get a lot of young people who come typically after college. And there's a phenomenon known as failure to launch. I don't know if you've heard of this, but there's a fear on their part that they're going to make a big mistake. And so they're afraid to jump out of the nest and just fly into life. So they're afraid, for example, if they take, let's say, a job at McDonald's because they need to pay rent, need to pay for their food, that and then they need a car to get to work, and then they need the job to pay for the car insurance, and that they'll end up at age 65 going, what have I done? I never realized what my hopes and dreams for myself. So we have to tell them that's not how life works. It's a series of movements, and each one is connected and leads to the next one. And part of what can give you a kind of compass and help direct you is an underlying vow. So we help, and then the same thing happens at retirement. So it's very common at retirement that people kind of lose their way. I think especially men who've had really careers that were very fulfilling, but also very demanding. So actually the heart attack rate and stroke rate is high after you retire, if people don't know what to do next. So if you have an underlying vow, then the means can change. So the means and the vow are different. So people mistake often the means, like a job at McDonald's, for the vow. No, the vow is, I want to earn enough money so I can support myself, so then I can take the next step in my life path. And underneath that is maybe a vow of, I want to do something to help people. Like my daughter, she was living outside of Detroit and working in the automotive industry, kind of as a middleman, selling automotive parts to different dealers. And then she talked to me and she said, Mom, I want to do something that really is direct service to people who are having trouble in life, who are suffering. And I'm thinking of going to nursing school. And I said, that's great. And, she bootstrapped herself through nursing school. She was a single mom. And now she's a nurse. And I'm just so proud of her. But she had discovered an underlying vow, which is, I want to be more of direct service to people. Now, the means could be anything. She picked nursing. But every time our garbage man comes to the monastery, I'm so grateful to him, because we would be suffering terribly if we didn't have somebody who came and cheerfully collected our garbage every week. So it doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm going to be elected to the Senate, or I'm going to be a great surgeon, or it doesn't have to be something that's obvious and in the public arena. There are so many ways of serving. Like a kind checkout person can make a difference in the lives of 100 people who go through that checkout line during the day, or a kind person at the post office. They've chosen their means to serve others. And it works. It works if we bring loving kindness and attention and awareness to it.
Well, I think I have time for one more question. One of the things I keep seeing in your book, it talks about rescue remedies.
Yes.
What are those? And it sounds like everyone can use one. So why would we use it?
Okay. That's for a time when you need immediate relief of symptoms. You know how the drug companies advertise medications that way. We need immediate relief of symptoms, and the symptoms are I'm going down the tubes in terms of anxiety or distress or unhappiness, or I'm frozen here. I don't know what to do. It could be a variety of things, but we're in trouble. You recognize we're in trouble. I need help. So then these are things you can do in 2 to 3 minutes to refresh yourself, to let go of everything that's tangled up inside and causing you tension and distress. So I'll give you an example, and we can just try it right now. It's called the 5-7-8 breath. And Dr. Andrew Weil, if you know of Andrew Weil, recommends this, and he has videotape demonstrating it. But the way it goes is on the inhalation, you count to 5, and you hold your breath for the count of 7, and then you exhale on the count of 8. And if you do that 3 times, it will switch your whole nervous system from sympathetic nervous system, that's fight or flight, that's release of adrenaline, to the parasympathetic nervous system, which is controlled by the vagus nerve. And parasympathetic is relaxation and presence and calm and equanimity. So let's just try it for 3 breaths. So I'll demonstrate it. So I'm going to inhale on the count of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I'm going to hold for the count of 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now I'm going to exhale on the count of 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now you try it at your own pace. 5, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Out breath 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One more breath. In on 5. Hold for 7. Exhale on 8. And there you are. And you switch from fight or flight and distress to a much calmer state of mind. So healthcare professionals can do this standing outside the door before they go in and see a new patient. Or we can all do it if we're preparing to be interviewed on a radio show. And we detect, or be the interviewer on a radio show. And we detect a little bit of suffering there. We can do it to calm ourselves down.
Well, I think throughout the day, what a powerful practice that is, because it doesn't take a whole lot of time, but you can definitely feel the difference when you do that. It just kind of brings things to a whole nother level.
It does. So you're in a meeting and it's tense and you wish you weren't in this meeting. you can do it and nobody knows.
I love that. Well, my goodness, Jan, where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community and learn about your other books?
Sure. So our website is Zendust, Zendust, like Zen, and dust, like, dusting your room, zendust.org. And then it will take you to, we have 2 sites. We have the monastery site and our downtown temple in Portland site, and then our teachers. So if you go look at teachers, the tab for teachers, you'll find out more about me and all about the other books I've written.
Well, Jan, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you so much for you call it a moment, but it was really a wonderful conversation.
Well, thank you, Jan. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Mindful Medicine, 40 Simple Practices to Help Healthcare Professionals Heal Burnout and Reconnect with Purpose. Such a great book that we can all use. If you'd like to connect with Jan, you can again at zendust.org for more information. And make sure to check out all of her other books as well. She's got so many great books to read. For additional mindfulness resources for mindful medicine, make sure to visit Jan's publisher, Shambhala.com. There she has listed several meditations that go with mindful medicine that just help you start your practice. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.